Welcome everybody to Raising Multilinguals Live. This is Tetsu Young and I messed up again today. Sorry about that. It is December, our last month of the year. Oh, what a crazy year. So Tetsu Young from AskTetsu. Let me throw it to my colleagues.
And I'm Utili Makaribot from Uta's International Lounge.
And I'm Rita Rosebuck from multilingualparenting.com.
All right. So as I was saying, it is December, our last month of a crazy year, and we're doing something a little different. So for the past 5 months, we've had professors, we've had head of institutions, different people come in, like people who we really consider like authority figure, come in and give us so many tricks and so many concepts that we've grasped over the past few months. And I think sometimes we just need to talk to somebody who's like our peers, other parents who are just in there, their sleeves rolled up and doing the kind of things, facing the same kind of challenges that we are facing currently. So this time what we've done is we have invited two parents who themselves are, I would say, an authority in their own way. They have their children, and they also have their channels on different platforms right now. So let me introduce to you Yoshito, who's mainly on Instagram, I think, as Multilingual Dad, something in common with that. Multilingual Dad, Yoshito, and I have Aditi with us. She's mainly on Facebook, I believe, with Raising World Children, or maybe her website. I'll let them give their little introductions themselves. So maybe Yoshito first.
Okay, hello everyone, and first thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real honor. So I'm Yoshito, I live in the UK, but I was born in France and I'm half French, half Japanese. And she's Korean, so we are raising our children with 3 languages, which are French, English, and Korean.
Okay, fantastic. Aditi?
Hi, I am Aditi Wardhan Singh, founder and author and publishing coach at Raising World Children, as you can see in my name. I have founded the collaborative platform, which is Raising World Children. It is for writers that write diverse voices, parenting challenges. We share book lists, but the thought behind that was to get people talking about the challenges multicultural parents face. And to that end, we moved to writing books, and now we have writers who are becoming authors through our platform. We have my books, of course, Strong Roots Have No Fear, Sparkles of Joy, How Our Skin Sparkles. And this month I have Small or Tall, We Sparkle After All. About multilingualism, I am Indian, raised in Kuwait, and my children are American, raised in Indian heritage. And I am trying to help them learn the cultural differences via language. And I've realized that it's a real struggle. I'm so glad Tetsu said that we are not authority figures, we are learning, because this is one thing I will say. I believe in raising cultural awareness, but I would say that I'm learning along with my kids.
Indeed, indeed. Sometimes our kids are the authorities in a certain way.
Authorities, the inspiration, everything.
Yes. So, we've got, it's such a big topic. We've got so many things that we could ask you, but today we sort of narrowed down a little bit the scope to different scripts. Given the background of our guests, we thought we could sort of narrow it down a little bit, at least on our side, our platform. But we do welcome questions that may not be directly related to the scripts from the audience, who I would like to acknowledge right away. I have them right here on my screen on the left. I have Mar, I have Heather. Hello, Heather. And I have Josie and Harumi. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining in, taking the time to join our live stream. So you are welcome to ask questions whenever you like, but we'll start it off. We'll kick it off right now. I think Aditi was touching upon it a little bit about what are the key important factors that make you want to let your kids learn the heritage language and the different scripts as applicable. What really drives you to do that? How important is it? So, anyone?
For me, it is, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah,
Aditi.
go ahead, start.
Okay, so for me, it is important because I have seen growing up as a global citizen myself that when you think in a language, it is different versus thinking in English or thinking in French or thinking in Hindi for that matter. When I used to go to India, I realized there's a vast difference between people who speak Hindi as their first versus me, who, for me, English is my first language. Surprisingly, people often don't understand, they can't wrap their head around the fact that for me, I think in English and then I translate things to Hindi quite often. So I have, when I see my kids, I see the struggle that they feel. First, it was the barrier of learning. We crossed that. And then we came to the barrier of how to learn, because there are many resources out there, but what fits my family? And like in a lot of times during festivals and all that, when you're talking about languages, you learn about small things that are very unique. Like Diwali is also called Deepavali. Why is it called Deepavali also? So those kind of small things. So yeah, for me, it matters a lot to teach them. And script writing, of course, I feel it's always great to learn how to read and write. I don't speak Arabic, but I can read and write Arabic, which is quite funny.
On my side, it's so I found that teaching my children to, or not teaching, but raising my children to speak our languages, so Korean and French and English, because we live in England, was quite important in terms of their identity, because if they're from different backgrounds, for me I thought it would be strange for them to grow up and not being able to speak a language, but also for the connection with us. And because I speak much more naturally in French. And in England, I've been living for 10 years. I still search for my words when I speak, and I can't really express myself properly. And I wanted to have this direct connection with my children. So to be able to speak in my language with them. And in terms of script, so I'm teaching them French and Korean, and I'm taking charge of this because I'm a teacher by profession. So it was easier for me to come with how to do it. But for me, when I grew up, so bilingual French and Japanese, I learned to read and write as well. And I feel like it gave me more a sense of identity as well, because if I can't read something, it's like it's not part of me. And so and also I struggled a lot to read. I've lost a lot of it. I can barely read now in Japanese. But I wanted my sons to be able to connect with their culture and to be more independent, because when you can't read and write, you're limited in terms of what you can reach in terms of information, or even when you go in the country, you feel like an outsider if you can't read what's written around you. So I really wanted to give them this independence, this belonging to a culture and to their roots. And yeah, that's the main reason I wanted to teach them to read and write as well. That's why it's so important for me to keep doing it, even if it's not always easy.
All right. So just to clarify, perhaps for those who are watching right now, Yoshito you said you is half Japanese, half French, but your partner is Korean, correct? And then you are teaching your kids French and Korean.
100% Korean.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why there's.
But I don't really speak. Yeah, I don't really speak Korean. I speak a little bit, but I can read and write. Yeah. Because it's quite easy.
It's quite funny that we have two people here that we didn't know about this in advance, that both of you, Aditi and Yoshito, you have a language that you can read and write, but prefer not to speak. I find that amazing.
No. I would prefer to speak it. I cannot.
Yeah. Well, yes, you would prefer, but you can't. Yeah. Whichever.
little specification there. Yeah.
I love it. I love it when I go to the store and I see Arab people around me, and when they speak Arabic, I can catch words of what they mean. And I miss Kuwait so much. And I think that's the beauty of it, that you associate a place with a language, and it's just beautiful. But yes, yeah, that's
So what do you guys think is a good age to start about, teaching your kids about learning to read and write? I mean, it's not like you can start this on day one. What's a good age to start thinking about this for these minority scripts?
So I would say
Yoshito, you could start.
it
Yeah.
really depends on, sorry, it really depends on when your child starts to show interest. Because, for example, with my two sons, I wanted to try about 2 years ago when we went to Korea. I wanted to start teaching them Korean, but they didn't really see the need to do it. And we did some games, etc. They found it funny, but that was it. And they didn't try to read or like to look in the books, and like they liked the books being read to them, but that was it. And so with my 7-year-old, he started showing interest when he was about 6.5. So in French first, and then in Korean. So it was more because we were reading, and I could see that he was following what we were reading. He was sometimes asking me, "Where are you now on the page," etc. Or when I was messaging my brother, he would look over, try to read what I was writing, wanted to answer. And yeah, so that's how I saw that there was an interest. And then I asked him, do you want to learn to read and write? And he said, yeah. So
Wow.
then it was a lot easier as well, because he wanted to do it.
That
And he
interest
could
is
see a
very important.
purpose.
Yeah.
Very good trick to kind of almost try to make something secret. You writing to your brother. So if it's secret, then it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I have a different take on that though. Like when my son was born, I honestly didn't even know that, I should start speaking to him Hindi at the go. Because for me and my husband, we speak Hindi as much as we speak English at home. But once my son went to preschool, he was surrounded by people who spoke English. So slowly, like Yoshito said, he stopped feeling the need to, because he was surrounded. Our family doesn't live anywhere else. So I personally, if I meet people and they say, oh, when should we start teaching them? I said, your native language, start like when they are born. Like just talk to them, whatever you can, just keep saying English, they will learn. They will learn automatically, because when they go, and that is what happened to a lot of my friends I see around, who are very confident and who have been successful in teaching their kids their native language, because they started as soon as they were born, they would only speak to them in their native language. Whereas my kids, slowly when they stopped feeling the need to, then I had to wait for a time when they were open to learning. And I missed that period where, I could have imparted it, versus me having to wait for them to be open to it. It was a huge struggle for me to get them there, that, I want to learn. Once they started to want to learn, then it became easier. Then I realized that if you want to teach language, you need to make it fun. You need to find ways to make it a game, or you need to find the simplest storybooks, which have the simplest words, which are very rare. That's a big problem. There are not enough books with languages written in just like plain 3-4 sentences, like you have English going, like phonetically, you don't have those. So yeah, that was a huge struggle. So, and yes, of course, a new language, as soon as they show interest, you start watching movies in that language. That's the biggest pull for kids I've seen. That any movie, you see the hero doing something, or the person is having fun with it and everything. And then, okay, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? So they pick up, and especially if a teacher teaches them at school, not mom at all, but a teacher in school, they learn really quickly. But yes, interest, of course, like Yoshito says, if you miss that beginning mark, then you have to you have to entice them somehow with, I don't know what, but you have to find your own way through it.
Oh, good.
And I
good.
think like
Go ahead.
What Aditi just said about like you have to find a way, it's really sometimes like that. You have to find a way to interest them, so you put them things on their way, and whatever you see them finding interest, you just double up on what you do there, and
Yes.
yeah, and then you can teach more things. And
Yes, I think we all have this experience with parents asking us, "What's the best way to teach them this or that?" And I always answer, it's not one way. There's no one size fits all. It's always,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Yes.
the addition of all the synergy of all the things that you teach them and the processes that you go through. So, I think the common thread.
Yeah, I always say to parents when they ask me that, I tell them that you know your child best.
Mhm.
Just think of
Yeah.
what do they really, really want? And when you know that, then it's your task to find out how to turn that into your language. So how to use, how to do this, what they want, but in your language. So there is the pull factor. So you don't have to push them. Yeah.
Yeah, and the common thread, I mean, from what you've all said, is that interest. How do you really realize what your kid loves, and how to double down on it, as as Yoshito said. Okay.
What is the bait you can use?
Mhm. It's important. You have to spend a lot of time with them to really understand what they want, and to really connect and make them like open up to you, like honestly about everything.
Yeah.
All that is it's kind of outside of the immediate realm of languages. It's a lot of just really parenting skills. I think
Yes.
that
And to me, you actually have to be quite humble. You might
Mhm.
have an idea in your
Oh,
head
yes.
thinking that this is the best way to do it. This is how I'm going to do it. But if it doesn't work, you just have to say, okay, that's not how we're going to do it. You tell me how we're going to do
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
That's so true. So true.
It's
So
somehow, yeah. Oh,
go
may I
ahead.
say something? It's somehow, yeah, like you all said, following the lead of the child. But I think what many parents struggle with, and this independently what languages are, the transition between the language they feel more comfortable with and where they know the words and they know the stories to the language that we want to transmit at home or to teach at home when it comes to reading and writing. So how to make this big step, because for many children it is a very big step. And I think when then also the scripture, so the script is completely different from what they are used at school or around the house. Yeah, they see the books that, or the newspapers that are laying around, and then you want them to focus on something that looks completely different. This is something that I would like to know from you both, how you manage to keep the interest and to make it very interesting. If maybe that step might seem very high, or for me maybe it is. I mean, I'm learning some of these languages as well, my son as well, but I'm curious by nature, but not everyone wants. So I would love to know your input on this.
I would say that for us, the real focus was to get them interested in reading, not necessarily reading Korean, but reading in general, and to want to know what's in the book. Sorry, what's in the book. So they, no matter the language, they would want to read it. And the way we help them being interested in reading is, so we have loads of books at home. Like I think we have 100 books in Korean, like children books, and less in French, a few, like not a few, but maybe 20 in English. And also, so when they were little, I know my wife would spend some afternoons reading books after books after books, just because they were asking for this and that and that. And so it was like time spent reading with mommy, and they enjoyed that. On the way to school, there was a library, so they would often stop there. There was sometimes some people reading stories to children. There was, or they would just borrow some books. So it was really in their habits to have books around them in Korean, in English at first, then a bit of French. But the goal was really to get them interested in reading anything, like to want them to know what's in the books. And then, so for example, my 7-year-old could read quite comfortably by 6 in English. And then I don't know if that helped him want to learn more, because he could see that he was comfortable in one language and he wanted to learn another. but I guess so. The first focus was to get them to like reading, or to be interested in reading.
I love what you say, what you're saying right now. And in Japanese, there's a saying, "Mimi ga itai." It means my ears are hurting, because when I get my wife to buy books for her kids, I always try to tell her to get the books where the reading is not so strong, or where we want them to, the target language. And sometimes she buys the French books, and we live in Quebec, they go to school in French, and I go, why are you just wasting time outside of school in French? We don't need that. But what you're saying is, absolutely right. When they come back with books from school, sometimes there's books that they love, it's in French, and they would spend hours reading it, and I don't take it away from them or anything. I just find, if we're gonna read, let's read in a target language that they're learning. It would have been fun. But I think you're absolutely right. Get the interest there first, then the other languages.
And I absolutely agree about having books around and being also a reading role model, that you read yourself as well. So, and not only books, but magazines, anything that you show that this is what you do, and that you show that you enjoy it. Of course, all parents, especially when you have a minority language, you might not have the opportunity to get that many books. They might not be available, or they would be kind of financially very costly to kind of gather a big library. But nowadays, have any of you used like online libraries or anything like that to supplement?
For me,
if you have experience,
online libraries. Sorry.
If you have experience on online libraries?
No, I am just starting to read with my kids. What I was wanting to answer was Ute's earlier question about script, introducing script for kids, because we have just started reading. So I don't really have much input on that. Like I said, for us, it was a struggle to get there. And but like Rita and I, when we had our talk, I think a year ago, my kids, to get them over that hump of, pushing the pushback that I was getting, and to introduce script, I put them in Hindi school, where they saw other kids learning Hindi writing and reading. And that was totally like, a breakthrough for my family. They really took to it that, oh, this is fun, other kids are also doing it. So that was something that they really loved to participate in, because the teacher would ask a question and they were like, oh, I know this, oh, I know that. So it was someone else teaching them something that mom has tried at home. So they were like, okay, fine, probably mom makes sense, when she's trying it. So that kind of helped. At home, when I'm reading to them, I try to point out the same things that they were doing at school. So that helped us a little. Corona really pushed us back a little, to be honest. For the past 6-7 months, we've just slid a little. Our language learning has improved, but our script writing has fallen back again. So, but I'm trying to get there. Probably Jan again, I'll start. But I just want to also talk about me when I was growing up, because like I said, I was raised in Kuwait, but I was raised I studied in an Indian school. So the name itself in Kuwait was Indian School of Kuwait. So there, I learned Hindi and English at the same time, which I think is pertinent to this conversation, because while I was learning my ABCs, I was also learning Ka Kha Ga, which is the basics of Hindi, while my Muslim friends were learning Urdu in Islamic school, which now as a parent, I come back to, and I think that, I of course advise my friends who are younger than me in parenting that, if you can start simultaneously, go ahead, don't think twice about it. Because I feel a lot of parents feel that let's finish one thing and we can move on to the next thing, which happened with me, to be honest. I understand, I think, 6 or 7 languages. But my mother then didn't teach me Marathi, her native tongue, because she thought, oh, she's getting confused, let me not teach her this. Let her get a grasp on Hindi and English, and then I'll go to Marathi. But that never happened, because she loved her secret language with her family too much. But when as a parent, when I think about it, I should have started earlier as well, because there's nothing wrong with we think kids get confused, but kids are very resilient. That's something that my kids have taught me, that we are way too resilient than you give us credit for.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
true, so true. Anything to add to that, Yoshito? Or I do see.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
just in terms of how I started to go from them wanting to read to how I actually did the first steps is, so when my son wanted to start reading Korean, we started with games where, so I started by selecting a few characters, so they were just vowels, and we played with them by including them in words that he knew already. So I basically used the words he knew, so used a picture and mapped the word underneath that was just one syllable, so short words he could recognize. And I did like 3 videos on it on my Instagram. So if people want to see exactly the details, they can go and check. But yeah, I started with games, and the aim was to make the game funny enough so that they would forget that they were learning, and that the learning would be a consequence of the fun they were having. And yeah, so I do that with Korean or French, but
That's
the aim is to get them to have fun.
wisdom of the wise. Wow. I mean, don't get me started. I could go on for hours on the fun part. but okay, we should come back a little bit to the topic of scripts. But just before that, once again, let's acknowledge all our audience. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our stream. When we have some interactions, comments, Heather says, we understand how much children, we underestimate how much children can handle. So that's really a comment to what Aditi was saying. They are resilient. Just you should give them as much learning possibilities as possible. So, but just before going to the scripts, one last there is a question that I did see that was about reading, and that's from Silla, and she asked, how do we encourage kids to read in other languages? I think we covered a little bit of that, but if you guys have a very short, direct advice about how to get them interested into other languages, because I think, Yoshito, you were saying your kids were interested in Korean from themselves, but let's assume you're starting from scratch. How would you get them interested?
I would say, so one thing that my mom always complained about me and my brother is that her and my dad both were bookworms. They loved reading all the time. We didn't. And I think the step she missed is that she didn't really go from the step that she was reading us to us reading on our own. And I think it's important to read with your child and to basically go step by step with them until they can walk on their own. So if you want them to be interested, you pick a book they like and you read with them. And I think that, so they read part of it or what they can read, and then they read more and more.
So you're saying, once again, the focus is not the language, it's the content, it's the fun, it's the interest. And then you sort of sneak it in. Right?
Yeah.
Parenting is half sneakiness, I think.
It's half sneakiness. Another word from the wise.
We need to be very sneaky to get them to do what we want. But like Yoshito, I think covered it very well. I think if you want kids to read, I think in any language, you apply the basic fundamentals that you would to encourage the love of reading, as in introduce the earliest reading words first, have a chart with all the letters right there, let them feel the letters around them, find the basic books, because those are very hard to find, I'm sorry to say. That's one of the main struggles of parents. Hopefully, I hope to solve that problem soon, but someday, maybe.
I can give a tip for that if you want.
Yes, please.
So what I do is, like, before because at the moment they can't really read books like the really simplest one. Like you say, it's really difficult to have simple enough for them to be
Yes.
interested in them and to want to read them. So I do games which are based on like single words, or like, for example, the memory game, you have, instead of having
Right.
two pictures, you have one picture
Right.
and a word written. And when you look at it, you have to read one of the cards to see if they match. And
Right.
that's not too much reading. It's fun.
Right.
So they can do
Perfect.
it. And then you make it a bit longer. So for example, we do treasure hunts where I write a small short sentence to say, go and find a clue under your bed, but in Korean, for example. And that's short enough for them to be able to read, but because it's a treasure hunt, they want to read. And so
Right.
you don't need to give too many big chunks, just a few sentences or few words to start
Right.
with. And when they get more comfortable, you can give longer things. Then you can get
Right.
to the books.
Yes. Another thing that I feel that I do that helps kids is that you write the sentence in Hindi, like the script, and then below that you write the exact same pronunciation of that in English. So like, you know, the phonetic translation of it in English to the closest that they can get. So that kind of makes it interesting for them that, you know, oh, that's something different. So I'm doing that with Hindi phrases. So that's what we're doing for Advent. I've made an Advent calendar of activities, like fun activities, just that's general.
Oh, nice.
Sorry, Christmas activities, whatever. And with every day, I've attached a phrase for them to read. So they're day one,
Ah,
how it goes.
that's nice.
Can I just ask about starting to write? Because I had a little bit of experience with this, because one of my children's minority languages is Punjabi. And unfortunately, dad didn't have the time to teach them to read or to write. So in my infinite wisdom, I then decided, well, I will learn with my daughter, and I will learn the ora era ili saha ga gaga or whatever in Punjabi, and to write them. But to me, I really kind of, because it's so different, the script is so different. So I had to start from kind of learning how to make the curves and all of that. So how have you approached that bit of writing?
So for me, those 2-line books work great. You know, the ones which have 3 lines in them, like 2 blue lines, 1 red line. So there are 3 lines. So how you would teach them to write A, I divide each letter into 3 parts. So it goes like, if you say I can show it on my hand. I mean, I don't have a pencil or anything. So you would go half, is like a 3 with a dash. And I kind of relate every letter to life. So it's like, I'll be like, oh, is 3 with a dash and a stick behind it. So that's how I'll explain it to them. Or a 3 with a dash and then 2 sticks behind it. And then there's, everything has a roof on top. Everything has a roof on top. And I feel for Hindi especially, you need to make sure that, I think that would be applicable for any languages, repetition. So you have, you write, that meant at least 4 or 5 times when you do. That was what we were doing 8 months back. But it was working. They knew how to write A to A. Sorry, you were saying something, Uche.
No. Yes, I wanted to ask something, because we were talking about the scripts, right, and how to transmit them to the children. And what if we are parents who want to transmit this language and to teach the language, but we are not teachers, and we don't have all these resources? We don't have a plan about what comes first and how to, introduce these signs that are different from what maybe the children are exposed to, what they see around them. So do you have any kind of tips on how to, for parents who want to do this? Because the language is maybe not supported at school. Very often it's not the case. And when we talk about Chinese, for example, I had a mom lately who told me, my child is 4 years old, but if I start now, it's too late, because compared to other children in China, that would take too long for her. And she doesn't know how to start with this. So if you're not a teacher, but you are a parent who speaks this language, and you don't want your child only to only to, it's already a lot, to understand and speak, but also to be able to read it, maybe to write it at some point. And it is a language that takes many, many years to learn the basics. Yoshito,
So,
you wanted to say something.
for example, yeah, for Korean, what I've done is I first started to focus on the reading part, but not too much. So like I said, I focused first on short words that were one syllable words. Like for example, in English, the animals could be cat, dog, whatever, that have one syllable. And I focused just on the vowels first. So we did some activities after he was able to recognize the words, where we just removed the vowel and he had to place the right one. But always, so still as a game, so when I did this, for example, it was part of a treasure hunt. He had to devise, like he had to basically write the code, and by filling the words with the right symbols. So I still went with the game by including writing, and I still left some support. So there was the word fully written on the side on another sheet, so he could still copy. So one thing I would say as well is to not think they can't copy because they should have learned it. It's as long as they need it, you leave the support, and they can copy until they are comfortable enough so that they don't need to copy anymore. And yeah, and to try to make the writing interesting and purposeful, not just copying, unless your child likes to write neatly, etc. But that's not the case of mine, so I had to find a way to make it more interesting. Yeah.
So as far as the person who came to you, I would like to give them a little bit of tough love like Rita had given me, that first of all, it's never too late to begin. Always you can always start. Secondly, whenever you start, you need to remain consistent. That is where I have failed multiple times, and consistent every day, right? If you're beginning, I think if you're writing, if you're talking just about script, I think a great way is just to do tracing first. There are many people in our even multicultural kids blogs who are specialized in just languages. So they create these printables that you can print out and trace along with them. So even if you don't know the language, you have help from people, experts, or people who themselves are trying and helping others. I know someone, Josie, she does Arabic. She creates printables for Arabic. She's there, yay! She does it out of the goodness of her heart. She creates printables especially for children, and they just trace it out. So a tracing is a great way to begin. And then slowly, like Yoshito says, you add on to the buildings. You start with the letters. It is very daunting, I'll admit that, of course it is. But small blocks keep adding, just like Legos, small blocks, one on top of the other, and soon it'll work out. Remain consistent and start with the tracing. Then Yoshito, I'm sure now I see that his Instagram is full of great games and tips that you can use for teaching your kids languages. You can find the same on Raising World Children as well. So yeah. We
did actually get a little comment from Heather saying, games, everyone go follow Yoshito on IG. His posts are wonderful. So you've got a great fan there, Yoshito. It is true. If you go to multilingual _dad, that's Yoshito's Facebook, IG account. So there's a lot.
Instagram, yeah.
That's a great stuff right there. So
and we had Josie mentioned. I mean, I saw she was on earlier. I hope you're still on, Josie. If you are, feel free to share the link to your Arabic printables as well.
She is very shy. She does. She does that for her homeschool group, I believe. But she'll share it with anyone who needs it. So if you PM me, and I'll connect you guys.
There you go. You can leave a comment, and we'll definitely find a way.
Sorry, you can leave a comment on this.
Yeah, and we also have.
So used to saying PM.
Yeah, and for those who who are new, we do have show notes for all of our sessions. That's pinned at the top of the Raising Multilinguals live Facebook page. So that is a live document that we update as we go. So you can find all the notes from the previous sessions also. But I don't want to detract too much from our topic of sharing different resources. So Yoshito and Aditi, we'd like you to perhaps share more of books or apps or YouTube channels or Facebook pages that you go to all the time to get information on these different scripts, how to learn different scripts, writing, reading. Anything you can think of that you strongly recommend to our parents out there?
For me, it's YouTube. YouTube has lots of Hindi songs, Hindi poems that are there. I personally, I like making sheets for my kids because my kids are kind of different in the way they learn. So I always do the first trace. I tell them trace this out, and then we do the repetition because that just works for them. As far as resources, of course, on Raising World Children, we have multiple articles by other parents talking about language learning and what works. Josie herself has written a number of articles and provided resources there. So you can check those out.
So that's your Facebook page, the Raising World Children?
Raising World Children. So the Raising World Children that you can see here.
Yep, that's going to be in the show notes. Don't worry.
Instagram. Yeah. So Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, all have Raising World Children in them.
That's good. You got that handle for all the platforms. It's easy to.
Sorry?
It's easy to remember when you've got the same handle name for all the platforms.
Unfortunately, my Twitter is very odd, but then I don't talk about it.
Then you don't tweet. Okay, and it's
I tweet, but I don't, because it's difficult to remember, right? It's like, how much are you going to remember? So our website is also raisingworldchildren.com. Even I have reading and language tips in my book. Whatever struggles I have gone through, I've spoken about it. I've spoken about how I got through those struggles and the mistakes I made. Please don't make them. I would say read the book just so I don't make my mistakes, because I tell everyone.
That's great.
Yes.
In terms of I would say, like Aditi said, there are loads of people who create printables where you can trace the letter in like fun ways or color in, etc. Yeah. Instagram, there are quite a lot of people. So if you have if you're looking for your language, just go on Instagram and follow people who create that kind of printables. And for Korean, I don't really look for them because I can't really understand what's written in Korean. I can't really search for it, so I create them myself. But for French, there are a few things that I think are very helpful to help children want to read. And one thing that I'm just going to subscribe is called Epopia. And it's a service where they send you a letter with the beginning of a story and actors who tell you different things about the story. So for example, king or the new queen of a kingdom, and say what the characters are going to do. So you need to write the letter to explain that. You send it back, then they personalize the follow-up of the story according to wrote. They send it back. So your child wants to read again what's written, and then he sends or she sends it back again, and it's like a story made step by. But it's really, I think it's great for your child to want to write, because they want their story to become the story, and then they can read what a professional writer wrote for them. And so it's called Epopia, but it's for French. I suppose languages for other countries that do the same, but I found that in France and it's really, really good.
Epopia. E-P-O-P-I-A or E-P-A-U-P-I-A?
E-P-O-P-I-A.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll get that.
We will put it. We will put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Anything else on the resources? You guys okay? We are
Yep,
we
I'm
are
good.
getting past the. Well, we're getting to 2:45, and in my neck of the woods, it's Eastern Standard Time in Montreal. So we want to start thinking about wrapping up. Oh yes.
We have one question,
Yeah.
maybe from two.
Two.
Yes.
Go
From
ahead.
Harumi, how much do kids need to spend time getting to the level where they can talk with their grandparents? Do they have to be spoken, let's say, on daily basis? I imagine this is then the additional language or the one that is less fostered at home. So I think, would you like to answer, Aditi? Or
Sorry.
See, I'm just doing this because
Sorry.
I know Rita is also laughing because we had this conversation where I had told her that my kids go once a week, and she had told me that we need to make consistent everyday efforts in order to help our kids learn a language. If you want them to get to a level, I think the best way, honestly, is to get those grandparents on a Zoom call like this one and tell them, hey, you know what, spend 45 minutes with the kids or an hour, and then, that's how it would work. Because I have started this with my parents. Every week, once my mom comes in online, twice. She tries more because she loves spending time. And even my husband's mom, and they both will come and they'll tell the kids stories and they'll talk with each other. Because I said, hey guys, you want to talk with the kids, you don't understand their accent, you need to do a bit of the work too.
yes, that's a very good tip that I also give always. So include them into your multilingual village, and they have a task and they have a way to connect with the children, and that's great. Yes, thank you, Aditi.
Yeah. I do bedtime stories in Swedish quite often as well with my grandkids.
Well, I think once again, it's about the interest that they'll have. So if they don't see their grandparents, very often, they don't have a lot of common topics that could make it difficult for them to, not because of the language, but because of the
Exactly
discussion. So
that's actually very true, because I would request this to all grandparents out there, is that the difference is not because the kids don't want to, the difference is because there is nothing common. So you need to ask questions about, just like any other human being, that, what is in your life happening? What games are you playing? Who's your friend? Who's around you these days? And that's what it is. Kids love to talk.
Yeah.
It's just
absolutely
exactly.
Yeah.
It's really a lot more about the relationship than the difficulty of the language itself, because regardless of how difficult the language is,
let's not sugarcoat it. It's going to be a struggle. It takes effort. Like the whole village has their consistency and effort. We have to make sure that we can be the bridge between the younger generation and the older generation by telling the young ones, no, you have to sit in front of Zoom, and telling the older generation, guys, please stay awake a little bit longer. Because they're like, oh, we have to sleep early, or we want something like that. So,
yes, but I think one thing that is also very, very important for the older generation, I see it with the grandparents of my children. Sometimes when we are on a call, they want to take over and talk about what they were doing, what they're interested in. Whereas it's better if they would listen a little bit more what the grandchildren are saying. Otherwise, they walk away, right? Yeah. When my children were small, they would just walk away. And then they would say, oh, I didn't see them. I said, well, you were talking the whole time. So, if you wouldn't be talking, I don't want to say not to talk. Absolutely not. But to listen a little bit more and to ask open questions, and to ask them, what are you reading? What are you doing during the day? So that they take the lead. Because when the children take the lead also with the reading and writing that we said before, it leads to a whole new world, which is amazing.
Yeah, because I have grandchildren who are 2 and 5, and there is no politeness. If they're bored, they walk away. So there's kind of no choice. I have to make it interesting. So what I found, for example, really works, that the 5-year-old, he builds with Lego. and mom puts the camera so I can see what he's building. Then we are discussing the Lego and see what you're making now. Why did you put that there? And how can he get in and out? Or what kind of machine? All these things. So it's on his terms, and he's really keen on it because that's what he's interested in just right then.
And also, my mom, like when she had started teaching, she and I had a bit of a thing because she's like, okay, in this 45 minutes, I'm going to teach you prayer songs. I'm going to teach you Hindi language. I'm going to teach you stories. I said, Mom, kids, they're just starting to learn. You have to like pack in a little bit and then talk more about them because they're kids at the end of the day. But then she comes to be very fair. The older generation comes from a school where I used to sit for 3 hours every single day for school. So I used to do the repetitive work. And you guys know what I'm talking about. In those days, mom would be like 4 o'clock down for studies, and then you get up at 8, you have your dinner, you sit back, finish your homework, and you're done. But these days it's all hands-on learning and give the kids space and all that stuff. And kids are spoiled. Let's be honest, they're a little spoiled.
But I wouldn't use that word. They're not spoiled.
Well, not spoiled. Okay, that's why I said little spoiled. They're little. No, you have to admit they have this. They're used to having their space because they grow up in a different world than us.
It's a different world. It's definitely a different world.
It's a different world.
Peers
right?
have different behaviors than.
Yes, they are used to having their opinions heard, and they're used to having their space. So again, I admit spoiled is not the right word, but again, they are in a different world. This world is a little bit more led by what kids, by our children. So
wow. Once again,
I
have some final words.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so often like parents are asking how many hours a week at least, etc. And I think it's not the amount of hours you spend with a child, it's the quality of the time. So you can spend like just a few hours a week with a child, but if it's meaningful and you connect with the child, they'll be more willing to speak language and to speak with you in that language than if you spend like 5 hours a day but not really connecting with the child.
yes.
So quality over quantity, basically.
Yes, definitely, for sure.
Absolutely. And as I had forewarned you, we are getting close to the time again. We always run out of time. We still have a few questions left, but let's see. Ute, are there any other questions from the chat that we should address before we close this session? No, we're good. We've covered them all. So Yoshito and Aditi, do you have any final an overarching advice to the parents, like a very summary? If I had one message for you, this is it. Yoshito first.
Okay. So if you want to teach your child to read and write, don't focus on the writing, but focus on the fun they're going to get out of it, or what interests them. So let them lead you and don't focus on what you want to teach. This should be just a consequence of them having fun.
Amazing. Definitely.
Yeah.
Aditi?
Absolutely.
As far as, since we're talking about script writing, I would say that start off small, start off with the basic letters first, do the tracing, then keep building on that, building blocks. And is key. Even 15 minutes a day is great. You don't have to, like Yoshi said, it's quality over quantity. Believe in the fact that they will learn. It's not it's not a mountain. You can do it. So just make sure you're consistent and help them balance everything out, and you're good to go.
Fantastic.
It is indeed, I think, a very important message. It's not about a boot camp. You don't send them off for 2 weeks, 24/7 in a language, and they come back done. It's not an installation of a new software, right? It's every day.
That's awesome.
Fully aligned, fully agree. So are we ready to, I see another comment come in. Ute, is this something we should take? Will we have?
It's a great comment from, I think, Hugo. Shall I read it just?
Sure. Sure.
for everyone. It's a great question. It refers to another one. The challenge is that linguistically, it's a very broad question from 0 to speaking. A lot of things need to happen. Short answer, daily. Yes. Long answer, speaking is interaction and it requires understanding first. For understanding, you need a foundation in phonetics. For phonetics, they should start as young as possible. We humans narrow down the ability to discern other languages very soon in their development, as early as 11 months. The more they hear the phonetics of the language, the more they'll be able to reproduce with pronunciation with accuracy. Next, what do you want them to talk about? If you speak it at home, at least they'll be able to talk about what they like and dislike, etc. So I think it adds up to what we were just saying. And thank you.
Very good. A great comment.
Thank you so much. Once again, thank you to everybody who's tuned in to our session today. I hope you learned as much as I did. Some very important messages about, really we don't look directly at the content where we're learning, but really looking at the child, how we can mold it to the child's interest and how we can do it on a consistent basis. That's just, if you remember just these key messages, I think you've accomplished a lot today. Thank you to our two guests. Now let's look forward to the final session of
Thank you very much.
That's coming up. So I'm going to put up the little banner, and Rita's going to tell us all about our last session.
Well, I'm going to tell you something about our last session because part of it is going to be a surprise. But it's going to be a roundup session where we look back at the amazing interviews we have had and what the kind of key points we've learned, what we found interesting. By the way, you can listen to all the previous recordings. You can check the show notes first and then go to the recordings. We will also have a quiz with some prizes. Yay! So and
see
then
how much you've learned.
Yeah, and then we will also look forward to see what's coming next year in 2021, because we will have a lot of interesting interviews. We will have parent sessions because I really love this session. I think we will definitely have more of these. So yes, a lot more to come on December the 15th, the last broadcast of Raising Multilinguals Live for 2020.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rita. And again, thank you to our guests. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. Some final comments. We have Heather, thank you. Very interesting. We have Harumi. Thank you for the great discussions and tips. We do this because, the parents ask us all these questions that we think, we have a nice platform where we can really spread the message. We can also break down some very difficult concepts in the academic world and provide that to our parents who can really take it in bite-size piecemeals, I guess. So thank you. This is the last session with guests. Next week, in 2 weeks, our final session coming up, a roundup session that we call, looking back on the past year and looking forward to the next year. So thank you, everybody. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.